What's up, people? It's the dog. Get it? It's a Captain Burr's impression. Y'all know who Captain Burr's is. he's a he's one salty son of a bitch here the last couple of days. You know what? He's salty when he's in his car. He must be having a hard time at work. Uh, if this video is titled what I think I'm going to title it, to YouTube users shall not be infringed. My friend, don't get your panties all in a bunch. You may not be able to handle what I'm about to say, and I don't want to get your hackles all up after the fine videos that you've recently made. You got going on that felon thing, dude. I don't. I'm not saying this to patronize you. I'm truly mean what I'm about to say. Those videos you made were an absolute delight. When you begin talking about the sterilization of felons and going ahead and stretching those powers out, I totally get what you're saying there, man. And I think too, there's some confusion on those who would say, "Oh gosh, you can't have violent people with firearms and stuff." This is to Daddy-O, California here. Digital. That's not the point, bro. That isn't the point. You cross a line when you now are able to tell one man to another what he can or cannot do. In a nation of equals, where all men are created equal, in a nation of people who are supposed to be equal, I am equal to shall not be infringed. We are both equal to you. When two men are equal, there is nothing about one man who is equal to another that allows him to tell another man what to do. Simple as that. The argument that, well, a group of men who are now equal are somehow greater than the other man is in my opinion, an insufficient point. One man does common law harm to society and must be isolated. Something needs to be brought into balance. All right, fine. But when we begin to pass these laws that reach into a man's esteem, it's not good. It's just not good. And what a better way to put it than better to live free in a pit of vipers than to live as a slave in a plush mansion. Does that not make sense to anyone? I mean, it may not make sense to someone if they don't feel that they're strong enough for such a method. But the problem is you go too far. Because what you do when you tack on these laws and you tack on these directives, you're imagining what the logical process of the behavior of another is. So like, well, we're going to influence the behavior of another person by changing their ability to acquire certain things. What type of fanciful bullshit is that? I don't... I get the idea of a community wanting to be safe, but how is a community safe when it has the ability to force its will on someone? It doesn't make sense to me. It does not compute. And I think the people who are for it, perhaps by some means, don't feel that they're subject to it. They see themselves somehow as immune to it, perhaps. The way that freedom-minded people feel that they're somehow immune to the chaotic violence that could ensue if there weren't for a strong cradle to grave governing system. But on with the on with the intended topic. Seatbelt laws. Florida's had a law for the longest time where when you're driving a motor vehicle, enclosed motor vehicle such as an automobile, motorcycles naturally don't have seatbelts. Uh, it is now a vehicular violation to not wear your seatbelt. Now let's follow this logical conclusion of such a law. Recently, when it did start out, let's go back here a little bit. When it did start out, just not having a seatbelt on was not constitute didn't constitute a police officer to pull you over. Just in the last couple of years, however, a person not wearing a seatbelt will singularly allow that person to now be pulled over and fined. So before it had to be something else. You run a red light, you got a tail light out, you got a bunch of secondhand weed smoke coming out of the window of your van, and then they saw you with the seatbelt thing, and you got hit. A fine of I want to say it's something like, my buddy had to pay it one time. It was like a fine of $73. There are of course good cops, relatively speaking, that you get pulled over because you're going 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, and instead of writing you a speeding ticket, he writes you you're not wearing your seatbelt ticket, or a loud muffler ticket, or something like that. I kind of dig that, man. That's cool. And I kind of understand speed limits, because you can't be doing 110 through a neighborhood. I understand how a large and powerful vehicle should not be going 100 miles an hour through a neighborhood. I understand the logic behind that law. I do not see what business the executive branch of government, of which law enforcement is, because executive, it executes the will of the legislature, and it's backed up by the judicial branch. I do not see where the seatbelt thing has to do with public safety in regards to it's on par with going 100 miles an hour through a neighborhood. I don't see where it's law enforcement's business whether or not you have a seatbelt on. Now, I do understand that seatbelts on average, increase vehicle safety for the occupants of a vehicle. I'm in the business. I understand how safety systems work in a vehicle. I understand how the airbag ties into the seat frame. I really know about these things. Is the reason why the state wants me to wear a seatbelt so I don't hurt myself? Like, it protects me from my own bad choices? Because if that's the case, that's terrible. That's terrible. I don't need you to protect me from me. That doesn't make sense. When a governing body begins to protect people from themselves, you got trouble, bro. You got serious trouble. So let's follow this to a logical conclusion. I get pulled over for not wearing my seatbelt. That's the only ticket I'm written. That's the only thing I'm doing wrong. I don't believe in that law. What do I do? Do I get a lawyer? So I get a lawyer. I got to get a lawyer. Or do I defend myself looking like this? hat and everything. I don't even bother to shave. I go to court. I spend $5,000 on a lawyer to defend me for a ticket of $73 so that I don't hurt myself. Oh, you want the argument of a seatbelt in a collision? A seatbelt on a person somehow keeps the driver behind the wheel so he can continue to control the vehicle? Y'all ever been into an accident? You get that first hit. If you're hit hard enough to get out of that seat, this ain't NASCAR, okay? And you know, the most drivers, they get that first hit, they're done. And the vehicle being damaged so severely, you can be behind the wheel or not. It probably doesn't matter. I mean, the speeds have peeled off. You're not a fighter pilot that's going to somehow direct your disabled jet into a lake so you don't hit the school. It's not like that. That's a stupid argument. So my choices are: I can spend $73. I can just pay the ticket, which means that the better part of a day of my labor, or half a day of my labor, depending on how work is, goes towards paying that fine. So for like half a day, all the labor that I do is for something that I do not believe in. Or even worse, if I've got to go to a lawyer, is a solid month or two of everything I do going towards something that I don't believe in just to fight it on the principle of the thing? 2 months of every task that I perform, every action that I take. What do you think of the seatbelt law now?